Hello and welcome to Home Company. Welcome to Home Performance Company Startup. Today is the 11th dummy of my podcast, and for those that are watching and those that are interested, thank you for that. So today I wanted to just give you a brief introduction to the different parts of an energy audit. So just kind of break it down into the different parts of the assessment, so that, you know, if you're not really sure exactly what an energy audit is, or you've gone through some training but haven't actually been out in the field doing energy audits, then this might be a good way to just kind of get a feel for, you know, what actually being in a house and going through the process is actually like. So the first thing that I like to do when I get to the house is I like to talk to the customer and sort of break the ice by sort of showing them and really making them understand that the assessment is all about them and it's to help them. It's not for me to be there to sell anything or try to talk them into anything or convince them of this or that. It's really to help them, you know, get in the driver's seat in terms of creating priority lists for the things that are most important to them. At this stage, I don't really diagnose. You know, I sometimes want to, because when you're doing energy audits for a long time, you start to see the same problems over and over again. And when you do that, I think you have a tendency to quickly problem solve when you're looking around in the beginning. But I'm careful not to do that, because there's been many, many times where I've felt the urge to, oh, I know what your problem is. This is what's going on because I see this and that. But once I bit my tongue, and then once I do the actual full investigation, inspection, the problem, things changed, and it wasn't exactly what I thought it was. And I remember distinctly, can't remember what the problem was, but I distinctly remember thinking, man, Eric, way to keep your own advice there and not diagnose. So you may not really be able to understand fully until you do energy audits for a while, but take my advice and just bite your tongue and always wait to the end to diagnose or give your assessment. So the first thing I like to do after I've gotten situated with the customer and gotten all my equipment into the house is I like to go around on the outside and do my exterior inspection. And I do that for a couple reasons. One, it's for just making sure that I keep things fluid. I've got my shoes on because I came in and out 5 seconds ago to, you know, bring my equipment in. So I just grab my, you know, prepped notepad and camera and all the things that I need to do outside, like turn on my CO detector, and I do my walk around. And I think that another thing that really helps me with is it gives me a perspective of the house from the outside. Now, obviously, if you go out to a cookie cutter house, you know, just a rectangle, that's a different story. But still, it's good to get all that information in the beginning. But when you go to some of these more complicated houses that have, you know, different roofs and different attics, it's good to see the whole picture from the outside before you go inside and start investigating. Because once you're inside, then you can use your thought process from outside to be a reference point, so you can kind of figure out where you're going. And this is going to be especially helpful if you're new at this, because if you know, haven't seen it before, then it's definitely going to be, you know, complicated if you try to figure everything out from the inside. All right, when you're outside, you want to get the HVAC age. So I'm just going to go through a couple things here that I want to look at when I'm outside. The ventilation, so the attic. So I'm taking a look at the soffit. Does the soffit have, you know, overhangs? Some houses in Maryland, at least, don't even have that. Not many. And then, you know, as far as the overhangs go, I mean, the soffit, is it covered with siding, aluminum siding, maybe vinyl? Is it perforated? Is it not? Is it Invisivent? I don't know if you know what that is, but Invisivent, I used to love to sell Invisivent when I was doing siding because it's beautiful. It looks clean, but the holes are invisible because they're sort of tucked underneath. But as an energy auditor, you need to know to look for that, because if you see those holes, then maybe there's some chance that there's going to be good ventilation coming in from the soffit. However, when you get in the attic, and if you know that you saw holes but you couldn't see what was underneath the siding, and you get up in the attic and you don't see daylight, then you can probably assume, although you can also go out to the eave, although it's not from the attic, it's not always easy to do, but you can pretty much assume that there's some kind of plywood or something that's impeding that. So I do my window count. I'm going to take a look at the drainage, the gutters. I want to make sure that the downspouts are properly extended, and like I said earlier, I just get a feel for how the house is built. The next thing I'm going to do after I've taken a look outside is I want to get inside and I'm going to start to do my measurements. Measurements play a large role in the energy audit. The volume of the house is required, so you have to get the ceiling heights as well, and the overall square footage of each floor. And sometimes, the floors are going to differ in size, so it's important to develop a strategy that also, to use the word again, is kind of fluid. I think I used it in a past episode, the economy of motion, where I don't like to run around and just get my square footage and then run back around and get my ceiling heights and then run back around. I like to try to incorporate some of these things that I need to do inside as I'm visiting each floor. All right, the next thing that I'm going to work on once I've gotten sort of the house nailed down in terms of the dimensions, the ceiling heights, making sure that I'm looking for any slope ceilings, knee walls, things like that. I go around also while I'm inside, just take a look at the exhaust fans, to take a look at what type of switch they have, and that gets into the mechanical ventilation part of an energy audit. So I like to have all that information because these are small details that I don't want to commit to memory while I'm walking around, but I certainly want to have some record of these things so that I can draw on them later if need be. Okay, so the testing part of it, that is where I am going to start to go around and I'm going to test the ventilation. I like to test I sort of started doing this more recently. I didn't used to do it this way, but I started to test my ventilation, my exhaust fans around the house prior to doing any combustion testing if the house has combustion appliances, because it just helps me get a better understanding of what I'm dealing with. So if I go into a bathroom, in the master bathroom, and it's one of the furthest exhaust fans from the furnace, and I don't get a reading, when I take a ventilation measurement, then I kind of know. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not going to go turn it on or anything, but I'm just saying that I kind of gives me an idea of like, okay, what should I be looking for? Because sometimes, and I don't know if this is for all energy auditors, but sometimes the testing gauges and the ways that they want you to do these things are a little difficult on the fly because there's a lot of fluctuations and things. So as much information as you can get about your surroundings before you get into the combustion testing, I advise you to do. That leads me to the combustion appliances. So usually what I do is gather up my things and I get down to that area of the house or wherever it happens to be. Usually it's in the basement. And I just get myself organized to make sure everything is off. And there's a specific procedure and there's some important things. And I'm not going to get into all of that with combustion testing. In fact, just recently I went through a training, partially just for my own, to get up to speed. And it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. And when you're doing an energy audit and you're trying to be efficient, you don't want to take up, you got to kind of know your time in the house, 3-4 hours. People start to, I don't think anybody would ever kick me out or anything, but I feel like, they have other things going on. So there's a balancing act between, doing a good energy audit and making sure the health and safety component is there, but also not getting hung up on that. So anyway, I get all the combustion appliances, I do all of my gas line testing, get all of those health and safety related to the combustion appliances, get all that sort of done, next. Okay, once I've done all my testing, and again, I'm kind of using sort of like a little bit of a rigid structure, but I do have to kind of move things around, and that's where I have a little guide, and I know I talked about this in the past episode that I use. It's a one pager where, for me, the way my mind works, it just helps me keep everything organized. So if I don't get something on floor 1 because I need to find that in the basement, but I still have a place marker for it, so that even though maybe I'm doing things that are similar to that right now on floor 2, I'm eventually going to get down there, and I'm going to, you kind of get the point. So back to it, the insulation inspection, I am poking my head around, while I'm inside gathering my measurements. If I see, a way that I can determine if there's insulation in a wall while I'm taking my measurements of the house, then of course, I'm going to knock that part out real quick. So, as I'm going through, I'm always doing these things, but for the most part, I grouped it into this section or into this stage is because that's when I'm pretty much ready after I've done all of my testing to head up to the attic or and this is again another example, but crawl space, usually if the crawl space is accessible from the outside, then I'm going to just knock that out during my exterior inspection in the very beginning, because I have my outside gear on. If it's cold, I already got my jacket on and everything. I just make sure I bring my light. But if it's on the inside in the basement, then I'm going to try to knock out my crawl space and my attic at the same time. There again, because I'm getting geared up, I'm putting my mask on, I want to make sure that I'm doing things in succession and doing things efficiently. So when I'm doing my insulation inspection, it's the 6 sides of the house, right? So you have the floor, all right? You have the 4 sides, the 4 walls of the house, and then you have the top. So there's 6 sides of the house you have to assess. A lot of times the floor, there's not really much you can do there. It's the foundation, or it's poured concrete, or whatever it is. Maybe it is crawl space though, and it has a dirt floor. So there are 6 sides to a house you got to assess. Full attic inspection. There are some times where if it's a low pitch roof or something and I can't really get around too much, then I can just use my knowledge and my expertise to do a visual, and you can check a few key spots to know whether there's air sealing or not. But generally, when I get into an attic, I do like to get up there and take a look around, and more times than not, I find something that I didn't expect, and that says a lot, because when you've done a lot of these, as I mentioned before, you see a lot of the recurring problems. So you sort of, it's like you've seen it once, you've seen it twice, but there are lots of things that are happening that are slightly different from here to there. You think you understand how it's put together because you've seen it 5 other times, but in this house, it looks the same on the inside, but when you get to the attic, it's a little bit different. So really, this is just a advice to do some searching around. You're not going to find all the hidden problems, but make sure you go around that extra corner, or if it's a little tough or tight to get through, definitely want to try to go the extra mile. For example, just one off the top of my head, yesterday it was a knee wall, it was a Cape Cod, and at first sight, when I put my head into the knee wall attic, I saw a bunch of insulation falling down, and I could just kind of feel, even in myself, I don't really feel like it. But just a little extra effort, I was able to just push some things to the side, and I had to get under the duct, and that was a little tight for me. I'm going on 50 years old now. But once I got around, I was able to see everything, and that gave me confidence to speak to the customer. I wasn't guessing about what was behind it. So I guess the moral of this story is that as an energy auditor, one thing I have found is that when you can actually get to the place and get your eyes on things and really see what's going on, then it just really makes for a complete, audit and a complete transaction. Okay. Crawl space, same thing. It's a little difficult sometimes. Some of the crawl spaces are a little harder. I personally, if it's really, really low, and I know that even, the people I work with can't get in there, then I'm not getting in there. but I can still do an assessment. Some crawl spaces I can look at, with my light, and I can see everything I need to see, maybe with just a little bit of investigation, depending upon how much time I have. So anyway, crawl space, same deal. You have to use your discretion, but most times when I get into the crawl space, I find something interesting. So for example, once I got into one, and I remember from my days in being an energy auditor training, my instructor Dave, he was talking about nature's hygrometer, and it was this camelback crickets that I've seen, I saw in my house as a kid. And they love moisture, they love humidity. And when I went into this crawl space, there were like 5 or 6 of them on the wall, and I was able to take a video, and a few of them jumped at me and stuff, and it was just kind of cool. So anyway, there's always something interesting, and I was able to report that out to the homeowner, and just a way to know that there's high humidity in a crawl space without taking any readings or anything. So okay, all right, so the next thing I do pretty much once I'm done with my attic inspections, and that pretty much means that all the other things on my list, which I haven't gone through every single thing, but I've hit some of the big points here, that's when it's time for me to do the most important and fun part of the audit. It's the blower door test, and I like it because it's a great way to set up the test and show the homeowner some of the things that you found, and not just point and talk like I used to do when I had windows appointments, even though we had a window demo and different things. But this is different. I mean, this is an actual demonstration where it's very interactive. The blower door is running, it's making a noise, there's a fancy digital meter that's spitting out numbers. It looks really complicated, and in a lot of ways it is, but in a lot of ways it's not. And you can actually explain the blower door test to the homeowner so that they can understand. And when they walk around and they see some of the air leaks around the house, and it's not the windows, then they are blown away. And it really helps people to, what I always tell them, the blower door test is going to help you connect some of the dots here. And it does. All right, reporting. That's the final thing, and that's going to be away from the audit. You do it how you want to. Personally, I make sure I have all my notes done. Back in the day, I would do a lot of the work in the house because I had more time. I was working for somebody else. Now that I'm doing other things, I have a little less time. So you have to figure out what works for you, but I have a good system. I keep track of everything, as I'd already mentioned. And I also have a great template, I guess, where I have a lot of the descriptions about the problems that I see on a regular basis on a sheet, like a Google Docs sheet. And I'm able to cut that, or copy that, I should say, paste it into the report, manipulate it, based on the customer's information or what have you. But a lot of times I find, again, that everything sort of translates over to the different houses with a few changes. And that helps me keep things, again, fluid, economy, keep things going good. Sorry about the dogs. Okay, and let's see, photo stream method. I think I talked about that in another episode. You want to make sure that you can easily access your photos to drop them into your reports and to reference them as well when you're writing a report. All right. And then the last thing here, which probably is a no-brainer, but during the process of going through the audit, you do want to have a way of making sure that you're addressing some of the things that are specific to that person, particularly their needs and things that they discuss with you when you initially met with them. So in other words, when you bring it all full circle with the report, it's good to address those concerns because those are the things that are important, once again, to that person. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. And if you had any questions or if you have any suggestions about things that maybe could help you, I would love to hear. You can connect with me at my website, ericgans.com, or you can take a look at my home performance website. It's homeairleakagetest.com or hometrustremodeling.com. Thanks for watching. Until next time.